Okay, so in this video, we're just going to review some of the concepts in development, repair, and aging of muscle. So all muscle tissue develops from the same embryonic origin, which are the myoblasts. This comes from mesoderm, and multinucleated skeletal muscle cells are actually formed by the fusion of many myoblasts. And once they form a long tube, then that becomes a skeletal muscle cell. It turns out that growth factors stimulate the clustering of acetylcholine receptors at neuromuscular junctions, and then cardiac and smooth muscle myoblasts don't fuse together, but rather communicate with each other via gap junctions. And what's interesting is that cardiac muscle cells start to contract and pump when embryo is only 3 weeks old. So just to summarize this process, we see here that embryonic mesodermal cells can turn into myoblasts. These can actually fuse together to form a myotube, and the myotube can actually develop into a mature skeletal muscle fiber. Satellite cells are a supporting cell that are located nearby, which actually serve as an immature type of stem cell that can actually divide and not only help to repair damaged cells, but regenerate lost muscle cells. So in terms of regeneration of muscle, we see that the Myoblast-like skeletal muscle satellite cells have a pretty limited regenerative ability, but cardiomyocytes can divide at a fairly modest rate. So we can see that our cardiac muscle can get thicker through cell division, but injured heart muscle, unfortunately, is mostly replaced by connective tissue. So if someone has a heart attack and they survive, it's usually not going to be replaced by new muscle tissue. You'll get kind of a fibrous connective tissue that replaces that lost muscular tissue. Now, smooth muscle does regenerate throughout life, and cardiac and skeletal muscles can lengthen and thicken in a growing child. In adults, it can lead to hypertrophy, which is an increase in the size of an organ without an increase in the number of cells. Now, muscular development in infants reflects neuromuscular coordination. And what's interesting here is that development occurs from head to toe. So an infant is more likely to lift its head before it's able to sit upright. And limb muscle development or coordination occurs proximally to distally. So an infant's going to be more able to move an entire limb, like at the shoulder or hip joint, before they're able to wiggle their fingers and toes. And peak natural neural control occurs by mid-adolescence. So athletics and training can continue to improve neuromuscular control through this age group. Now the difference in muscle mass between the sexes is that typically females have about 36% of their body mass is muscular tissue, and the typical male musculature makes up about 42% of their body mass. Now the major difference between these percentages mostly is a result of testosterone quantity. So because males have a tendency to make more testosterone than females, that they actually have enlarged muscle fibers which are heavier and more dense and therefore make up a larger percentage of their body mass. Now body strength per unit muscle mass is actually the same in both sexes. Now in terms of aging, we find that with age, connective tissue increases and muscle fiber count decreases. By age 30, the loss of muscle mass or sarcopenia begins, and regular exercise can actually reverse sarcopenia. So there's an adage in biology, either use it or lose it, and that's still true for muscles too. So that although when we age and our muscles atrophy or our tissues atrophy, one way to slow the decline of sarcopenia is actually just to use your muscles. So regular exercise can help with this. Atherosclerosis may block distal arteries, and so that what we may find that as a consequence of cardiovascular disease, we might see limping or severe pain in leg muscles, and that could be a symptom of a lack of blood flow to those muscles.